Hello, and welcome back to the Men of 1004 Thoughts podcast. This is episode 6.
I think we're getting close to it.
Six.
We've had the logo, which for some reason remains to be black, and my head is my hat's black. I don't know why we continue to keep it that way. Can we have a white one eventually? It seems like a better one.
You know what's funny?
My God.
I haven't switched them. I just, honest to God, haven't thought about it. This is the third episode after we've had the conversation. I'll never remember. Anyway, welcome to the show. Sorry we were not live yesterday. Life is busy sometimes, and
Leah, I believe life is like a hurricane here in Duck World. Race cars, airplanes.
I hate you.
We'll solve mysteries.
I know what it is.
DuckTales. Woo!
Woohoo! I know what it is. Go away. Anyway, yesterday was a busy day for me. If we were going to do the show, it was going to be at like 10:30 at night, and I just was not going to do that.
Yeah, I'm not doing those sort of shows. We are technically going on toward the end of SmackDown, so we haven't really watched the show at this point. But obviously, it's something that happens.
Yeah, we haven't watched the show. But does it matter considering like 8 storylines got cut because of WWE's recent decisions?
Yeah, that's kind of part of the show today to talk about that. So if you want to go ahead and dive into it.
Let's not lie to the people. That is the show today. We're not talking about anything else because at this point,
we are talking about something else, but it relates to the story.
It's all the same. It's all packaged together. Of course, we're going to talk about the recent releases in WWE because, again, why wouldn't we? I'm absolutely shocked and baffled by everything that has transpired in the last week.
I can't say I'm shocked about certain things, and other things I can be definitely shocked about. So I think it kind of depends on that situation, you know?
It's like, you know what? I'm not shocked by it happening. I am so sick and tired of hearing the same damn excuses every time from this company. Budget cuts. You've had your most profitable year 3 years running. Just say what it is. We don't want you here anymore.
I don't think it's about that. I think the roster has gotten bloated throughout the years. The roster, because it is bloated, it's hard to have people there. So
why is the roster bloated, Joe?
Well, they hire a lot of people.
I don't care what anybody says. 2 years. Well, 2 years ago, they had this massive hiring frenzy, hoovering up everybody they could so AEW couldn't have them. They don't have to admit that's the reason. You don't have to believe that's the reason. Anyway. That's why. That's why.
They had nothing to do with AEW.
Oh, no, 100%.
Here's why it had nothing to do with it, and I'll tell you why. World of Sport was starting up in Europe, and that's what they were trying to compete against, which is why
that's NXT UK. I agree with you on that one.
Yeah, but that's all the main guys, and everything else was a normal hiring company.
You have to think. You say AEW wasn't around 2 years ago. Yes, they were. They're coming up on their 2nd anniversary, and the show was announced. The show was announced New Year's Eve of 2019. So in 2019. But look at when WWE went on this massive hiring spree.
They've been doing this for years, Lee. It's nothing new.
Right. I'm aware. But this was also around the time that they weren't letting people out of their contracts.
They weren't letting certain people out of their contracts because people wanted to be cut due to the fact they wanted to go to AEW to make more money. So they paid them more to stick around.
Or be used. Again, you'll never convince me otherwise. And that's fine. We'll have a disagreement on that one. You believe you, I'll believe me.
It's a simple fact that you cannot say that decisively that it's all AW situation. That's just not right. It wouldn't be fair to say that. It's not true.
I think it's very fair to say. But again,
because there's so many reasons why.
You believe your world, I believe my world in this particular instance. We're never going to agree on that. You'll never convince me otherwise. But regardless, is that now we're seeing why, no matter why this hiring spree took place, doesn't matter why at this point, we're seeing WWE realizing like, oh, we screwed up. We hired too many people.
Well, I think the problem with that is if it was about just hiring too many people at certain time frames, that would be a good point. My problem with that point is they're hiring people and they're keeping those people, but they're cutting other people from the past. Like, for example,
you're right. I agree with you. I'm sorry to cut you off, but another question that's just going to tie into that, so I might as well keep it going. Why, as a company who uses, I'm going to be generous with this, and I'm going to say uses 15 to 20 wrestlers per show. They have their 15 to 20 that they use. That's it. Realistically, that's it. You have 15 or 20 people who are in every storyline. Then why did those companies have a roster per show of over 50?
I have no problem with that point, but people have to lose too.
People have to lose too. I get it. I get it that people have to lose, and I get having jobbers or not jobbers, but enhancement talent on your roster. But you don't need 30. You don't need 30.
And this is my problem with the Raw mentality, where you have 3 hours and they think they need to have another 40 people on their card. I don't buy that compared to SmackDown. SmackDown is a show, but there's no reason of why their roster would be bigger on Raw. There's no computing for that.
You know what's funny about SmackDown is that SmackDown uses a lot more of their talent, and it's an infinitely better show. Raw has a tendency of using the same 5 people throughout the entire show. MVP and Bobby Lashley, I absolutely love. But when they're in 4 segments in a 3-hour period, but yet you can't get Aleister Black on the show?
Well, they have been. He's just not on Raw.
Recently. I'm not talking about like in the last 2 weeks. But
we're not having problems at all. And they had him on the card for Raw for a little bit of time. If you recall, he had the eye issue that happened on TV with the Mysterio storyline. That was earlier this year. So they did have him on there.
I tried to forget that.
We are not disagreeing on the problem with Raw's stories or SmackDown stories for that matter. That's not the debate here. The situation is never going to be about that because we both agree they need to be better in the story arcs. That's not the problem. The real issue is that Raw's overbloated roster leads to the fact that so many guys on those cards don't get used. So SmackDown has a roster that has lesser amount of people, and they use more of them because, quite frankly, small amount of roster, you're going to use more people. Raw does the very same thing and keep everyone else down in the NXT units.
That's what I was about to say. Thank you. You brought it up because I was about to cut you off and say. What irritates me the most about all of this in WWE, the biggest problem I have with WWE is a mechanism. Because I have a lot to say about WWE. I have a lot of problems with it. I have a lot of problems with how Vince McMahon runs the company. I think once, I'm going to say retired, but you know what I mean. But
you're going to be retired.
Yeah. Once he retires, I think it's going to be infinitely better.
I don't believe that.
Triple H has his own, hold on. Triple H has his own unique set of problems. But in general, he has a much clearer idea of what the fans want. You see that every week in NXT, and you've seen it for years with NXT. And now that he's kind of getting more of a foothold in SmackDown, you see it in SmackDown. But ultimately, what irritates me the most is that he will take guys like Aleister Black, Ricochet, all these guys, Samoa Joe, Finn Balor. He'll take these guys up from NXT, use them for a brief spell, a cup of coffee, and then they're never seen again, or they're seen sparingly, or they put in these awful, god-awful storylines, and then it's like, well, you couldn't make that work, so they move on. Because Vince has his core, we've talked about this before, Vince has his core guys, and that's who he plays with.
I think we have to be fair to this a little bit, just to be played out.
Well, let me explain my. I'm at the end of my point. Is that if you're going to just use them for a moment and then throw them away, just let them stay in NXT. Bring them up for a month, 2 months. Use the storyline you want, then let them go back to NXT. Let them work both shows. It doesn't matter, but don't pull them out of a brand and a spot that they are making work beautifully just to completely throw them to the wayside and not use them. That irritates me more than anything else.
There are 2 points I want to make about what you said, though, just to point it out real quick. Mm-hmm. One, I don't disagree with the idea before we get started here, I don't disagree with the idea what you're mentioning with the fact that they need to be better about using the roster of people they have.
Yes.
If you bring people up from NXT, make sure you have a story. That was technically a problem that many people didn't like about them.
Long time.
About Raw and SmackDown. And because that long-standing problem became a big issue internally, Triple H made the mandate that if there's nothing for somebody, you can't have them. So they had to have some story for them to have coming in. Like Rhea Ripley, for example, just arrived to the show from NXT. She became Raw Women's Champion, beat Asuka for that title at WrestleMania.
Have we figured out if she's heel or face yet?
I think they wanted to be a bit of a tweener because Charlotte's around, and Charlotte wasn't there. She probably would be a heel here. But if it wasn't for that, that'd be an issue. That's the problem I have with Rhea is that Rhea is a great babyface, but also a really good heel. The character, I think, could work better as a heel because it is more of a badass gimmick, similar to a couple other people I've signed over the years. But it is a character you can make probably really, really amazing as a top face.
They're doing the tweener thing horribly.
Yeah.
If that's their plan.
Well, yeah, they seem to have trouble doing that because I think their biggest problem is they're trying to figure out which siding of her is better, I think. And that's ultimately a problem with, like we talked earlier about Vince, because Triple H and others know already how good Rhea can be as a heel or face. They've seen the NXT. They literally built the character around her for years. They know what she can do with heel or face. But the problem is they are shoehorning Charlotte in to a story with Asuka and Rhea. And understandably, you're going to put Flair on that card with them because she's back and she wasn't involved in a lot of stuff at WrestleMania and current WrestleMania. So I had no problem with bringing Flair into it all because obviously there's a story there with Rhea and Charlotte internally already. That's ready to go in story form. I had no problem with that. So when they did the triple threat thing for that, and Charlotte, of course, is still involved, she wasn't the one pinned, they're bringing that up for the next pay-per-view. I had no problem with that story. But this is why it's partially a tweener spot for Rhea, is that Charlotte is a top heel on the card, no matter if she's champion or not. She's Charlotte Flair. She's going to be a top heel or top face, depending on her alignment at the time. No matter what you're going to get with her, you're going to get Charlotte Flair. Top face, top heel. Whatever it is. That being said, though, Rhea was feuding with Asuka, a babyface. Charlotte comes in, heel. So Rhea had to play both sides, and that's part of the problem, I think, with management. Didn't think that through. They could have had the rematch with Asuka, then Charlotte into it all, but they wanted to bring Flair back so quickly that they just wanted to insert her back in the title picture. I think they could have easily made that matchup later on, though.
Yeah, my thing about the tweener thing is that if that's the case, they are doing a really bad job. And that's what I was saying a second ago. Like, if you want a tweener, look at CM Punk and look at Stone Cold, for instance. A tweener doesn't have to go from face to heel back and forth. You can just attack everyone and just be like, because I can. Have a good day.
I think the person that's the best example of that today, at least, will be Randy Orton.
Oh,
he can play easily both sides if he wants to. He doesn't give a shit.
But he doesn't have to at the same time.
That's the thing. But for guys like Randy has gotten to a point in his career where he can go back and forth and no one's going to care. With it being Kane and Big Show type of twitching, that's the problem because they switched to being a straight up heel or straight up face. There wasn't in between. Randy has been the same guy the entire time. There's no difference with Randy Orton now versus 10 freaking years ago. The difference is ultimately just whatever he wants to do that day.
Yeah. Who does he hate today? Yeah. Well, right. Well, let's move on because this is going to be a bit of a shorter episode today. Just so you know. I think you finished. I'm sorry. Continue.
I said I had 2 points. Second point is, like I mentioned earlier, I don't disagree with your thought pattern about what we're talking about. But we do have to play devil's advocate here and say when it comes to Finn Balor, for example, they had a plan for him already to go. He was going to become the first ever Universal Champion.
Right.
He became that champion, but he was injured in the match, had to take off a long time to do that. So it took a while for him to get back and tune to things. So he was ready to go. And then they put him in the IC title hunt situation. He won that title, was holding that for a title, and then he decided to take time off for marriage, comes back, and of course was NXT champion. So Flair, for Balor's situation, they did have a plan, but because of things getting in the way, that's an issue. But you're
right about that. I'll concede to that one.
The opposite of that would be Apollo Crews, a guy who right now is doing fantastic, but it took him 5 years to get there because he was somebody that on NXT killed it, but they brought him way too early. And I think he was around and doing things for them, but he was a guy that didn't know what to do with. A guy they had some potential with him. They knew he could be great, but they didn't know how to do it. And they finally let Apollo on SmackDown do what he wanted to fucking do, and it allowed him to be Apollo Crews or the Nigerian Prince Apollo Crews. I think he's better at playing because when he was Giant Nation, on the independent circuit, he was doing this kind of character.
Well, here's the thing. He didn't have a character when he came up. Like on Raw, he didn't have a character.
He was
He
just
was high flyer C is all he was. The most egregious, the absolute most egregious call up, the one that angered me then, it angers me now. I will never understand it. Was Sanity. You had
why? Because it was the SmackDown and Raw draft. And
no. Hold on. We're not talking about them getting called up. We're talking about literally not using them at all.
They were a niche group, and I think NXT was perfect for him. It was Triple H's idea, the Sanity group.
Well,
it was his baby, which is why I'm so shocked they went on SmackDown and did nothing.
I looked it up before the show because I figured we would talk about like this kind of subject matter. They were called up and were not seen on the show for 9 weeks, where they got their asses kicked, and then they weren't seen again for several weeks, where they then got their asses kicked.
It's a weird moment with Sanity because most of that group went on to do good things. Eric Young, the guy who led the group, was the one who's released much earlier than that. He went to TNA, did a great job there still. Nikki Cross, of course, the Twisted Sister, came up separately from Sanity, if you recall. It was the men that went up. Nikki didn't go with them. So they separated her from them already. And then they brought Wolf in, who obviously did a great job, but then, of course, went to NXT UK and then became part of the Imperium group. He's now gone as well. But his release was, coming.
WWE has a very Warner Brothers approach to things. Let me rephrase. Vince McMahon and the main roster has a very Warner Brothers approach to things.
I partially agree with that. I think it's a fair criticism.
They do not know how to just not screw something up. Like, don't touch it.
I do think that it's alone up to a point. With Sanity, I think the biggest problem with them is Triple H was running NXT, wasn't running SmackDown. So because of that situation, Sanity was his baby, and they made it a group because of his connection with that. So by taking it out of NXT, no one knew how to use it with Triple H. And I think the SmackDown great team just didn't know how to use it.
You have such an interesting character. Let's go ahead and get into him and my problems WWE had with him. You had such an interesting character. You had what could have been, and this is thrown around a lot, it's thrown around with Bray, and it's been thrown around with a lot of people, but I think with Aleister Black, it's 100% true. You had what could potentially have been the next Undertaker in Aleister Black with the character he was portraying in NXT. So how do you bring up an interesting character like that? You put him in a tag team with Ricochet that's going to do nothing.
They did the same thing with Gargano and Ciampa, if you recall.
Yep.
They were also the champions of NXT at the time. Like they had
they were in a feud.
They had been in feuds many times before that. It wasn't new.
No, they were in a feud. I didn't realize this. They were in a feud at the time.
No, they were in a feud previously. Their story had already concluded.
No.
And then they brought them back in that story later on that same year, which is weird to forget.
No, you forget. Their feud ended because Ciampa had to get neck surgery. They got called up before Ciampa's neck surgery.
Yeah,
they were in the middle.
If you recall, that was the one that Aleister Black had gotten injured. He was champion. Yeah. Ciampa beat him for the title randomly. That's when they all kind of came together. And so either way, really built up to where NXT became Gargano and Ciampa their place. That was that whole year they did that.
You might be right. It's all tied in together still, but there's no reason they should. There's no reason they should have been a tag team.
They were already broken out. That's 100% true.
Ricochet and Aleister Black had never teamed before. So why?
I like the idea of them, but I think the problem was it made no sense because these two were great separate characters on their own. You didn't need them together.
I'm so sick of randomly put together tag teams for the sake of randomly put together tag teams that WWE seems to do. That is one of those things, which that's nothing new. Vince McMahon, in his 108 plus years of living, has never given a damn about tag team wrestling. So
I think he has in the 90s when they were doing the extreme shit.
I don't think he did.
We know
I
he
think
did.
the Dudleys
he paired up teams a lot.
What I'm saying is like Vince McMahon is also like, to give the man credit, he's really good at just accepting what's there. Like with Daniel Bryan, he did not want Daniel Bryan to be in the main event of WrestleMania 30, but at a certain point he couldn't ignore it. I think the same thing with Edge, Christian, the Hardys, and the Dudleys happened in the 90s. I don't think he cared about it. I just think he was like, well, that's free money.
Yeah, when you're making bucks for him, he's going to be cool with it. I mean, anyone would be.
Right. And so that's my thing. Is like he's never cared about tag team wrestling, and he's always just put these random tag teams together because lulz, I guess. Anyway,
They love doing the strange bedfellows thing, if you recall, and that sometimes works though, like the power trip.
Not when it's overdone.
Rock and Sock connection, like they've had it work out. But the problem with it is, though, you're right. There's more problematic teams coming together randomly than good teams. But I think it's okay to put them together at times just to kind of make something fun happen.
They'll break up an established tag team and then put together a random tag team. And I'll never.
The best example of that may not be exactly they broke up and came back together and they paired them up, but I think Randy Orton, who just was freshly out of Evolution, and an Edge, put them together as a team. It made no sense for them to be a team because they both were from world champions. They just put them as a team on Raw. It didn't make much sense, but it worked.
I'll give you a more recent, more egregious example: the Iconics.
Great tag team, but they just split up for no reason. Well, I think here's the reason why they split them up. I think they had planned for one of them to stick around. They wanted to keep Peyton, and they likely were going to get rid of Billy, and then they released them both. I think they planned 100% because both contracts were expiring at the same time, and they knew they were going to keep one of them at least. And so they split them up to see how they work on their own. And I think Billy did great, and Peyton was pretty good too. But it was situations where I think they just did not know how to use them when they were separated because they were great together. But
this company often does things that I just do not understand. It's very WCW of them.
Ultimately, WCW's biggest downfall, though, was a lot of the things. But I think creative decisions on par at times. I think WWE today is on par with some of those creative
personnel decisions. Giving two dudes, what's it called? Favored nations clauses. That was really dumb. But neither here nor there. Let's move on because, like I said, this is going to be a shorter show. We're going to go maybe an hour, so we're going to have to get through this. The list is in order, or not in order. We're going to go back reverse. Santana Garrett, Lana, Murphy, Aleister Black, Ruby Riot, and Braun Strowman. The one that confuses me the most is Braun. We've had that conversation.
A lot of people are confused about him, and I think it's understandable. And we mentioned this together yesterday when we were talking, and I think there is a possible reason as to why they cut him, and it wasn't just related to budget.
I think
I do think that part of it was due to the fact that Braun wanted to do the strongman competitions again, and it planned to go back into that.
Yes, but the other reports I've heard is that it's a Bret Hart situation. I
don't know if it's that much.
No. When I'm talking about the Bret Hart situation, it's the reason Bret was leaving. Vince offered him a contract, regretted that contract, because from what I've read, is they offered Braun, give or take, $1 million plus.
Here's my problem with that theory. I don't mind the idea of it, but there's a difference between Bret Hart's situation and Braun's. First and foremost, Braun's situation isn't the same because of today's climate.
Again, don't look at it exact. I'm not talking exacts. I'm talking about money. No. It's just Vince McMahon regretting a contract.
It's important to mention the difference between them. Back in the 90s, WWE was not publicly traded. They were publicly traded around 2000, 2001. When that happened, they were able to go to the stock market in America and make more money, and therefore became a billion-dollar corporation after a while with investing and TV deals and whatnot. Back in the 90s, they didn't have as much money. Bret's deal that he gave him at the time of that period, which is the time that Bret was the top guy in the company, had been champion and doing great stuff, that was a huge contract. And today, it wouldn't be looked at as a massive deal. It would be like a mid-card deal today, comparatively speaking. But at the time, it was top money. And the champion got bonuses. So Bret was champion a lot in the 90s, so therefore he has a higher contract plus bonus. That was a troubling issue. As a result of those problems,
it was also like 20 years.
The money was bigger, and Vince didn't have the money to give Bret.
Yeah.
So that became a problem.
I agree with that.
Bret was like, you know what, I can take a lower deal, not a problem, but the money that WCW was going to offer him was so massively different that I felt they needed to do that. As far as cutting the contract up completely, if they couldn't offer him the money, why would they want to keep him there, right? There was a situation, I think, over time where it could be that perhaps there's an issue with if the money is so massive and you can't afford to pay it, then at that time you got to wonder, if you're the WWE, I can't spend this money on you because the money that I have is far less than what I have for you. So I think most people look at it from that perspective, where there's an issue trying to make sense out of everything. The Braun deal, though, is very different from Brett's. They have the money today to take care of Braun. They could not take care of Brett.
Well, yeah, no, obviously. Obviously, they have the money.
So today, you can't say budget cut, even though that's oftentimes what they're told, because back then it definitely was a budget cut, 1,000%. But today, bullshit on that, because they have many other people that are under $1 million, and they're making less on them than they were making on Braun.
Again, you are looking too far into what I said. The comparison of say,
but that's the only also
the only comparison
because someone decided to disappear for a few minutes.
That's true. Sorry, my dog. I heard my dog barking. I had to go let him in. But the argument I'm making of the comparison to Vince and Braun or to Brett and Braun is not the exact situation. I'm not saying it's exactly the same.
But it's important to talking the differences, though, and why that.
Yeah, I understand. But what I'm saying is just Vince McMahon agreed to a contract. Vince McMahon then regretted said contract.
I don't think there's a regret though behind it. That's what kind of bugs me about that.
I think it is.
They could always readjusted it.
According to Sean, who has spoken to several people backstage, that is the consensus of they realized that they felt like they were paying Braun too much money.
What I find about that mindset, though, if you're a business, is that Braun to you seemingly was worth that at one point.
It was just a championship match.
And I don't know, the money they offered him wasn't something recent. That was a contract that had been offered to him before he was champion, by the way.
Last year.
Big enough as a deal that they thought, and by the way, every new contract in WWE always goes up from the previous one.
Well, here's the thing.
You don't go lower.
But your argument's also kind of invalid because this isn't the first time we've seen WWE do that. This isn't the first time we've seen them offer some people big money contracts and then being like, or no. The Good Brothers are a perfect example of that.
It's very rare that they offer them a contract and then
we see it. We've seen it recently is the problem. But the argument still is, here's the thing. The argument of why they wanted to cut Braun's contract and it being a big money contract could also lead into our second topic. We'll talk about in a little bit.
We still need to talk about the other.
I know. I'm just talking about with Braun. This may tie into our next subject after we talk about the releases.
I do think, though, we need to keep it in mind, though, just to point this out real quick. I do think if it is related to the fact that it was a money issue, Braun was making them a lot of money. And so I think the situation that really is important is, I think they feel if he wanted to do strongman stuff and it was taking time away, that meant he was not going to be worth the money he was going to be getting in return. And that could very well be why he ended up getting cut.
Yeah. I disagrey. They let people go.
At least in that point, I can understand why.
But yeah, again, we'll get into that in a minute. Our next one, the one that irritates me the most, is actually I'm sure you're thinking Aleister Black. It's not. I'm actually glad to see him gone because he was so poorly used. I would love to see him used properly somewhere else.
Tommy End is going to be a big deal again somewhere else.
Oh yeah. That's the thing is like I'm actually not as upset about Aleister. I wish he would have asked for his release. Well, I reckon he may have. Reports say he may have. So, the one that irritates me and the one that angers me the most is someone I've been a huge fan of before she was even in WWE. Ruby Riot. Of anybody on this list who was so egregiously used, it's her on the main roster. What she possesses, the talent she possesses, what she could have brought to that women's division, given proper opportunity, was so completely wasted in this company. When she was on the Indies as Heidi Loveless, like she absolutely crushed it. She has all the talent to be the most diabolical heel you have on the roster, and she has the ability to be the most sympathetic babyface you have on the roster. She's fantastic in the ring. She's fantastic on the mic. The fact she was not used angers me more than any. Well, let me say, improperly used. Even in the Riot Squad, they should have been tag team champions months ago. But
years ago, honestly.
Yeah, But the fact that they have just shit canned her since she's been on the main roster just bugs the shit out of me. Go on. I know you're about to
I have no disagreement about Ruby Riot's talents and abilities. We said this over time for many years. I think that it felt shockingly stupid that Ruby came up, was given a story, which is great, put in a group with two girls, Sarah Logan, Liv Morgan, one of which, in Liv Morgan's case, was very new to the business, was a model previously, didn't have a lot of experience, but still was promising.
But
Sarah
also,
Logan, who had been playing away with crazy Mary Dobson before she came in there. Ruby comes in as a great, perfect leader. So,
yeah, hold on. Let's take a second to just appreciate Liv Morgan and the absolute work she's put in. She's absolutely crushing it. Like, of anybody who's going to come in with no experience and then just do what she's done, should absolutely be commended.
I think they gave Liv one of the greatest gifts they could possibly give her. They gave her Sarah and Ruby to learn from. Two amazingly talented women. Ruby, of course, has been talented for years, top talent elsewhere. She's been great. Ruby's biggest problem, I think, wasn't so much her. It was a situation where I think she was out of control of the problem, where WWE has a certain look they like. And they like the certain look of the person.
And that's what makes me mad.
Liv fits that look. I understand that. It's a marketing thing. I don't mind that situation because I understand the situation entirely. The talent, to me, sometimes outweighs a good look situation. Because you can also master somebody and make it work out just fine.
I'm going to be honest with you. That bothers me on a personal level. Because you're right. Dumb. Like, you're right. Like, my thing is, like, you're absolutely right. WWE has always had that problem. They've had that problem since their inception, really. But the fact... Well, first off, Ruby Riot looks fantastic. Let's just discuss that.
We're not disagreeing on that at all, but it's a situation of what the company believes. This is not just anything it is company believe.
Go that. Anybody who thinks... Oh, I know. Anybody who thinks she doesn't look fantastic should just go to hell. But to overlook somebody's pure, unadulterated talent, Ruby Riot was an absolute well of talent. She was never used. Like, if they would have given her, if they would have given her the opportunity, if only we could have seen a program of Becky Lynch as the champion versus Ruby Riot being the diabolical heel we know she could be, that could have been a game changer. That could have been a rivalry of the decade. But the fact that she was overlooked because she didn't have a proper look irritates me on a personal level because different situation, but I've been there. I'm overweight. I've been overlooked for a lot of stuff, simply based on my appearance and regardless of if I could do what I was being asked to do. So, yeah, that pisses me off on a very deep, emotional, personal level.
And I agree. The whole thing is dumb. I don't mind that mindset. However, to, again, play devil's advocate situation here.
Don't.
While I may not disagree with your thought pattern, I know the company has their own specific look they want. Because of the situation, I can't get mad at them for wanting that look. However, I can get mad at them if they're wanting something that is so egregiously stupid, but then overlooks talent to help them get there. So, for example, Ruby Riot was greatly used as an enhancement person, where any girl they wanted to get over, they gave her to Ruby to make her look great. So Ruby's goal in their mindset was to be used as a developer. Similar to what Natty's role has been for a long time as well, but Natty was someone who obviously they never let her go. So for her, it's a different. But Ruby's situation was exactly the same as Natty's. That's why they were on the same show at the same time, if you notice. They've barely ever been together. And
that's fine. That's fine. Well, that's not true. They had
believable.
It doesn't matter. And to your argument of the company has a certain look and you can't argue with that, I also highly disagree with that and find that.
When I'm saying I can't argue with that, I'm not saying I personally don't believe something.
No, I know what you're saying.
I'm getting mad at them for wanting what they want. You know,
I'm not holding you accountable for what you're saying because you're basically saying what they would say, and my argument to that would be that's also bullshit. Because what if the company had a certain look of a certain, let's say, skin tone? Yeah, it's a little more egregious, isn't it? A little bit more.
If you ask some people,
they do. If
you ask some people,
I can. The point I'm trying to make is that I can absolutely and 100% always will criticize them for their dumbass decisions when it comes to stuff like that. So no, I don't have to accept that as their look. I don't have to accept that as what they want. If that's what they want, then go to hell.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, I think
So
for Ruby, though, I don't know if it's about look for her. I always thought the best thing for her that she could do was to be that heel character that, at that point in time, looks have no reasoning to matter because your job is to be an
she
assassin, and that's the best thing you could have on your side.
well,
Because she can say to people, "I have nothing to lose. Look at me. I'm not like your Barbie doll," and that's important because fan see her is different, which is why Ruby stood out so often among everybody else. She
yes,
wasn't the Barbie
which is
doll, and
why
that makes her great.
it's so much. Which is why it's so much more infuriating that she was never given the opportunity. That's what irritates me. Like, if she would have been put in a position to succeed and she just didn't, she didn't get over, well, that happens and that's unfortunate, but, it is what it is. She was never given that. She was never given that opportunity. Fans cheered the shit out of her anytime she was out there. Fans loved Ruby, whether she was face or heel. So,
The Riot Squad was
you
very
can't
popular
tell
at the
me
time. We kept them together
well,
so
let's
long.
say you can't tell me that she wouldn't have gotten over. You chose not to give her that opportunity. So
I think NXT gave her a
she,
shot and she did well there. And I think
yes,
they thought she was such a big deal. They
again,
gave her a squad to work with on the main roster, but then
I've told
just kill it.
I've told you this a billion times, and I'll tell you a billion more if that's what it takes. You cannot discuss NXT and WWE in the same breath.
No, what I'm saying is
But
they saw her as a star from NXT, brought her in, gave
right,
her a leading group spot, and then just did nothing with that for her.
again,
That was the craziest part to me.
because Vince McMahon is a toddler. He is a 60-something-year-old toddler. He plays with a toy for 5 seconds, puts it down, and goes to something else. So, again, I could go on for hours about this, but I don't have the time. Ruby Riot to me is the most egregious name on this list. But
Shit, we've already got 2 down. Let's take the others.
yeah, in that same token, though, I'm glad she's gone because she's going to go off and absolutely kill it. She's going to crush it wherever she goes.
I firmly believe AEW is going to offer a lot of money because they
And
need
here's
her.
the thing.
They need her.
Me and you discussed this the other day. Like, I don't think there's only 2 people from this list I think should go to AEW, and I want to see in AEW, and that's
Right.
Tommy End, Aleister Black, and Ruby Riott or Heidi Lovelace, whatever name she goes
Yeah,
with.
it should be Heidi.
Because she will bring so much character and legitimacy to that women's division. Heidi Lovelace versus Britt Baker could be the best rivalry they set up. But
I would love it. I would love it. Personally speaking, because of that situation with Britt,
yeah,
if she comes in, knocks your teeth out.
yes,
First
it'd be great.
First night on the show.
Absolutely.
You do that to a dentist. Perfect way to make your mark. Perfect way to make your mark. I want that.
I would slap Tony Khan in the face with my wallet if it meant we also got Tommy End versus Kenny Omega. Take it all.
Tommy End, Aleister Black, before he made it to WWE, he was a big deal in Europe. He was known for being able to work with guys and shoot wrestling.
Here's the thing.
Meaning he was fighting guys who were trying to hit him and hurt him.
Yes.
And he made it out of that.
We talked about this when he first got signed by WWE. I used to not watch indie wrestling, like, at all. Like, it wasn't that it was...
you to watch this up with Tommy at the 16K tournament.
We talked about it, is that I was over at your house hanging out one day, and you were like, hey, WWE's talking about hiring this new guy from the Netherlands, I think it's... Yeah,
Amsterdam.
And, Amsterdam. And I was like, okay, cool. He was like, no, you need to watch it. And you told me, and you were like, you found a match on YouTube, I think. And we sat down and watched it. Yeah. Instantly fell in love with this guy. And realistically, he's the reason I started watching indie wrestling.
Tommy End was a good introduction.
Oh, man. And Johnny Gargano and Tommaso Ciampa was shortly thereafter.
I've been watching Johnny since his Dragon's Gate days. So I told people for years how great he was, and I felt like he was a guy that he should have already been signed by WWE.
Dragon's Gate is the first real indie promotion I watched, and you're absolutely right. Look, it's fantastic.
It's crazy.
But no, Tommy End versus Kenny. Tommy End versus Miro. Yeah, they were in the same company, but they were not Tommy End and Miro.
I think if you were to bring in the same version of Tommy End that was previously there, it'd be fine.
Joseph, imagine this right now. I need you to look inside yourself right now and just imagine Tommy End versus Pac.
I feel like people are going to die in that match.
Or Tommy End versus Penta.
I was about to ask you if Pentagon Junior versus Tommy would be the best thing because I think those two would
No,
legitimately try
I'll tell
and
you,
break some
here's the thing.
armor.
I think Pac and Tommy and have very similar, like hard hitting. I'm gonna kill you or die trying
Well, yeah,
mentality.
because
Oh
Pac had
my
worked in
god!
Japan for a lot of time, and he
Yeah,
also worked in Europe. But the Japanese time was really what got him in a big deal spot. That's why when he went back to
yeah.
the Indies, he went straight to Dragon's
Anyway,
Gate. So those two would be
I,
more than happy to bring martial arts into it, make it a hard hitting
right.
match.
So Ruby Riot or Heidi Lovelace, I'm gonna call her by her indie
High
name
level
because
is
that's
going
what
to be what it goes by, yes.
Heidi Lovelace versus Britt Baker. I need that. Like it's not even that would be
My
great.
thing
I
is
need
not
that
so
in my
much.
life.
My thing is not so much high level versus Britt. I think the biggest thing is that's a good money making match. But beyond that, having her there and just being a top tier,
Oh yeah,
wrestler,
that's
they
going
need people
to.
to leave in the division badly,
Here's
and
the
I
thing
think
about
that's the best
AEW.
place to go.
Here's the thing about AEW's women division. It has not been good for a while.
Yeah. Get a little better.
Well, no. Here's the thing. Here's the thing. I'm going to give AEW. Oh, and I was very critical of Double or Nothing the other day when we were talking about a very certain spot, which we don't have time to get into, but we will.
Next show.
Huh?
Next show.
Hell of a show. Hell of a show. Double or Nothing was fantastic. But there's one moment. It was like Backlash. It had its own zombie moment. But neither here nor there. When AEW's women division takes a step forward, it's not like WWE where they take gradual steps forward, a little better, little better, little better, little better. They take light year jumps, and then they stay put. And like, okay, this is Sheeta becomes champion. Sheeta's a champion for a year, having great matches with Ty Conti and all these people. Okay, Britt Baker and Big Swole kind of have their thing and makes Big Swole legitimate and a very interesting character. I fell in love with her based on her rivalry with Britt. Thought she was great in that role. So okay, great. And then it just kind of rides the course, which you can argue COVID's the problem, which is possible, but then you have this thing with Sheeta and Britt, and again, you have another giant leap ahead. I think Ruby or Heidi coming in would be that next giant leap AEW would need in their women's division to make it legitimate, which it's legitimate now. I don't want to belittle any of the women in the division because they are busting their asses trying to make it the best it can be. But with her and Britt and Sheeta and Riho and Ty Conti and Nyla Rose, them together could put on some of the Thunder Rosa could put on some of the best women's matches we've seen since Bayley Sasha NXT, given the time.
And it's weird. I think we've been talking about it for years. There was a situation when AEW just started. They had hired Britt almost like right away, and she was the first female team they had.
Oh man!
And along with Kylie Ray. Now Kylie went on to do her own thing after that. She left AEW, was even turned up in Impact.
She's making her return, which is good to see.
And there's a lot of things of why she took time off. Britt's situation was she had a bit of time off for an injury, but wasn't long. The thing is, I told people this the other day, and I felt it was bad to say it this way, but it's the only way I can say it, and it makes sense to people. AEW was edging for 2 years to finally get to Britt. Because everyone knew from the damn start she's champion. It wasn't even
here's the thing.
You cannot deny it. You cannot say it was anyone else. You cannot say anything else other than that. It was a fact of the matter.
You know what?
On day one.
Listen.
But she was 2 years edging. 2 years.
Listen. You know what? You play devil's advocate for WWE. I'm going to do it for AEW. I would argue that's the best thing they did for their women's division.
But the thing is, you made it suck for 2 years. Why?
I don't think it sucked for 2 years. I'll give you it sucked for a year. But
okay, I'll give you 8 months. You're in 8 months, but I'll give you.
No, Sheeta was champion for over a year. Sheeta was champion for over a year, and I think she did wonderfully with the title.
Was fine, but she has too.
What I'm saying, here's the thing. Again, I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt for 2020 because they do have a large chunk of their women's division who are from Japan and overseas, and with COVID and travel restrictions, it kind of put them in a weird spot. Is that their fault for not hiring more women wrestlers? Probably. But at the same time, I'm going to give them a pass But 2020 gave us that fantastic Britt Baker versus Thunder Rosa Lights Out match, which, oh my God, was fantastic. Nyla Rose versus Sheeta was great. Again, Sheeta versus Tay Conti. But again, I'll give you a year was trash. I'm not going to argue with 2019.
Either way, though, like I said earlier, in the situation with Britt was someone we all knew should have been champion probably right away. And that's sort of probably a good and bad thing. Good in the fact that because they've waited so long, it becomes a bigger deal now that something happens.
Like, here's the thing.
It is a situation where I think that they had to sacrifice their division for a while to make that happen. And I don't like that idea.
I do. For the simple fact of, now granted, their booking should have been better in between it. Fair.
Yeah, it blew. That's the biggest thing. One part the matches always sucked. It was the stories, too.
Here's the thing. If you're going to give passes to some of the crap WWE does, you got to give a pass to this.
There's no reasoning of why I should give a pass to certain things versus others.
Again,
I agree.
I'm not saying you should. I'm not saying you should. I agree with you that it was trash. But
we can look at the overall is what I'm saying.
I would make the argument that if AEW did not go the path they did with Britt, we're going to just simply talk about Britt. We're not going to talk about the rest of the booking. That's irrelevant. We agree on it. If they would have not gone the path they did with Britt, her winning,
she's a heel still, so it wasn't like it's a big deal for a face to win. That's what kind of kills the whole story too.
No, but again, if you didn't go the route you did with her, yes, her being the first champion would have been great, and it would have been like, yay, that's awesome. But it would not have been as big of a deal as it was this year at Double or Nothing. People, it wasn't just that Britt finally, like, it wasn't just that Britt won, it was that she finally won. And that moment with her and Tony Schiavone at the top of the stage made me tear up. And I hated that because I don't like to feel things in wrestling anymore. WWE killed that part of me.
The thing about that is everyone knew it should have happened already. It wasn't like a theory of maybe it should, maybe it shouldn't. Everyone and their mother and brother and sister and their aunt and their uncle from down under their grandfather from the dead past, everyone knew Britt should have been champion already. So by the time it got there, like I said earlier, it was an edgy moment where literally you're edging for 2 years and it finally is able to give you the idea of something happening.
It's a Daniel Bryan thing too. Like, people wanted him to win the championship a million times over.
The thing is, he already won the World Heavyweight title. The situation was not about him.
But that's what I'm saying.
That was the big deal.
What I'm saying is that people were so angry. Kofi's a better example, actually. You're right. People wanted him to win the championship 10 years ago.
Well, he's been right there in the cusp for a long time.
Let me ask you a question. If Kofi Kingston would have won the championship 10 years ago versus currently when he won it, would it have been as big of a deal? I would argue no.
Well, here's the problem with that statement. If it would have been anyone, especially anyone of another color, no. Because Kofi Kingston's a black man, not a half black man.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Black man. And the company for many years has overlooked those black men. This is one of the main reasons why Kofi winning was such a big deal.
No,
so
I
it wasn't about that idea.
Well,
it was the WWE title, and it was a black man winning it, and that's a big deal to mention. So yes,
that's a big deal. That's a part of it, yes, but we're not talking about that aspect of it because that's obviously going to cloud everything. But I'm talking about Kofi as a performer. Yes, people were really excited. People were really excited that a black man won the championship, which should have happened decades ago, but neither here nor there.
They already have had a connection to
that.
And
also, it's not that he was a black man who won the championship. It was that he's the first man of African descent. Because Mark Henry won.
Mark Henry won the World Heavyweight title, did not win the WWE title. That's the difference. It's not the same thing. Two different titles. Two different companies, even fact.
May I finish?
Go on.
It is. The point of it is that Kofi Kingston himself as a character, yes, people were really excited about this, but you can't take it away from Kofi either. People were excited that he won. Because he was so beloved and they wanted him to win it for so long.
And that's the difference, though, between the two moments we're bringing up. Kofi Kingston as a man, isolated from everything else. As a character, everything else isolated. It was a bigger deal when it happened. 10 years later. But
With Britt, it would have been
moving all that and putting it back together, he should have been champion years prior. But that's the reason why it's so important to mention that, because he, being a big deal he is, people knew it should have happened already. So if it would have happened already, that's important.
Well, here's the difference, though.
Because it's important to mention that.
We also have to mention a very important difference as well, and we need to discuss the why, not the what happened. The difference in that situation, and while I say the Kofi thing is more egregious, is AEW had a plan. AEW knew. There was never a question in anyone's mind. There was never a question in any fan's mind. There was never a question with anyone backstage's mind. Britt Baker was going to be champion. Now, do I think they planned for 2 years? No. But did I think they were like, we're going to hold off and this is going to be huge when it happens? Absolutely. You'll never convince me otherwise. As to where WWE just didn't believe in Kofi.
I disagree with that because he was singles champion many times. So it wasn't like this at all.
Sir.
Let's be factual here. He was both U.S. and Intercontinental Champion.
Curtis Axel was an Intercontinental Champion.
One time, Kofi won it multiple times. Also the U.S. Also titles with other guys. Kofi Kingston was a guy they believed in before New Day and before he was champion.
But I'm sorry. You're right. You're right. But they didn't believe him to carry the company. They didn't believe him to have the main strap.
They still didn't believe him the title. They had to top guys.
That's why it sucks.
Kofi Kingston, no matter how good he is, no matter how much we like him, same thing with Danny Bryan. Even though those guys won those titles, they're chasers and not champions. And
which is a really stupid mentality.
Roman Reigns, the guy they focus on, is the champion, not the chaser.
Right. Yeah.
So that's why they focus more on him than on Kofi.
They just keep beating those people down our throats too, don't they? And it makes people irritated.
I do believe the story has to be giving you a top guy to go after. Otherwise, there's no story that made you care. We cared about Kofi Bryan. They told us a good story to get there.
Well, here's the thing. How they use your supposed champions like Roman Reigns and Bobby Lashley and Cena, they try to make them sympathetic as to where the one person they've done it perfectly with, the one son of a bitch they have booked to perfection. You hate his guts, but you love to hate him, is Brock Lesnar. Because he never looks like, oh man, I'm going to do it this time. He's like, I'm hungry. Who can I eat this week? And that's exactly, if you're going to have someone chase, you have to build up more people like Brock, of who's just a threat. Roman Reigns is at that point right now, which is why people like him. It's almost like,
for that matter.
Yes, but that's my point. That's my point, is they tried so hard to make Roman this sympathetic baby face, and it was like, that's clearly not working.
To be fair to that, WWE's a family company, not a teen or young adult company. As a result of that difference between from 90s or 2000s to today, they're focusing on understandable stories that focus around things like kids can enjoy and understand. Super Cena, we might dislike, but Cena was over. And
here's the thing, I never hated Cena. Cena got a lot of shit for a long time. His character's a douche.
It was always the booking that people had a problem with, and they focused on Roman Reigns.
Well, here's the thing.
Roman Reigns wasn't the problem for the booking either. He just shows up to work and goes home. I don't blame the wrestlers at all.
Well, I'll say this. I never, and again, I was maybe more naive in my wrestling prowess back then. So with Cena, I never had a problem with his booking. Do I think he was put in that position a lot? Yes. Do I think it was probably excessive? Yes. But again, they never really booked him as a sympathetic babyface. He was show up, whip ass, go about your day.
They try a lot.
There
never worked.
I'm about to say,
and the good thing about
several exceptions. Go on. I was still talking, but go ahead. I was saying, usually with Cena, they put him in that sympathetic babyface moment. They tended to try a little harder at making it make sense. So, as where with Roman, it's like, oh man, do you see how much this giant man who could whip anyone's asses is kind of, sort of hurt. It just never worked.
The difference, I think, with Cena versus other people is similar to the situation that Hogan had. They focused on the stupidity that fans believed that it was real.
Yep.
And because of that, they wanted to focus on a guy like Hogan years ago who could be a top guy who looked threatening enough to be a top guy.
He looked like a top guy.
And the guys who beat him, by the way, were guys who were other top guys. Randy Savage, Ultimate Warrior. These guys were equals in that mindset to fans, in visibility at least, which is why steroids were such a big deal back in the day. Today, we know wrestling is scripted entertainment. We didn't know that years ago. Problem. I think the best thing that Cena had, though, was unlike other eras, especially in the 90s, we were doing a good job in this early 2000s period and mid 2000s period with Cena having threats to work with Triple H, Shawn Michaels, Randy Orton, Edge,
right?
Bobby Lashley at one point too, Umaga. All these guys were there as threats to Cena, so he could be believable as a guy who could possibly be.
That's another really good point. Is that I think Cena gets, and we're going to move on after this because we have a few more people to get through and a whole other story to get through, and we're coming up on an hour, and this was supposed to be just an hour show. But in Cena's era, Cena was also created by his foes. Edge, Randy Orton, Kurt Angle, Triple H, Shawn Michaels, like you said. So no one, all of his opponents, Cena never looked larger than life than them. Even though he was booked higher than them, he always felt in the fight like Edge could win, or Kurt Angle can win, Chris Jericho. So, but with Roman, they book him against guys that you're just like, nah.
He wasn't ready when he got the spot too. That's the biggest problem.
Yeah.
But
so let's move on. Let's move it on. We're gonna move on from Roman. Go through the list a little bit more. Aleister Black, like I said, Lana, absolutely no shock to that. 100%.
Yeah, I'm more glad it took so long.
Right. Did you see her tweet, by the way? It made me laugh.
I think the thing with Miro.
Yeah, she said for no reason. I just want to congratulate Miro on his AEW TNT Championship. And Miro responded,
yeah.
I was wondering what took you so long, and I was like, y'all are funny. Santana Garrett, again, not really surprised.
All the talent in the world that chick has.
Yeah.
She's going to be I think she would be better to go to NWA. She probably bit better.
Oh yeah, she needs to go to NWA. But again, I'm not surprised she was gone because she got called up, and I hadn't seen her since.
Well, she never really was even called up. She was NXT for a while, and then they didn't know what to do with her for a bit. They brought her up to be an enhancement talent on the top show, and never did anything with it.
I was about to say, I'm pretty sure she got called up, but nothing there.
Yeah, it was a weird moment, man. Weird.
Murphy, I'm not shocked. Buddy Murphy. I'm shocked and not shocked. I think he's one of those people I thought would just be around for a long time. Same thing with Ruby Riot. I thought they'd just be around for a while. So seeing him go is
2020 for him. His 2020 was big.
Yeah,
he said that a lot.
But again, he was great. Here's the thing: like, as shocked as I am for him, like he had a great 2020, but he hasn't done anything in a while. And I mean, Braun Strowman was just in a world title match. So, like, it's one of those things, like, when you put Braun in the mix, it's like, all right, maybe it's not as shocking as you would think.
That's what kind of made it a little easier to, I guess, stomach the Murphy release. Because Murphy was all very talented. I think he's one of those kind of guys I think could go to Japan and step out a little bit there. Probably go in Europe again.
I need him and Wesley Blake to team back up on the Indies. But
I don't really need that. I think Buddy could be a star on his own.
No, I think he could. I think he could, but Blake and Murphy was so good as a tag team. Another tag team that randomly broke up for reasons.
Buddy did split from that. He was great on his own.
But I love them as a tag team. I'm sorry.
You're right.
Here's the thing, though. I have a special place in my heart for Buddy Murphy and Wesley Blake and the Vaudevillains and the Ascension. Because, like, they were the tag team when I started watching NXT. Like, that was the
and they were never bad teams. The Ascension alone probably was a little more.
Oh God, that's another team that just completely got shit canned.
They never were going to fit on the main roster, and I knew it from the beginning. Same thing with Bo Dallas. We all knew those gimmicks were never going to fit. They were only making
we had that conversation when they all got called up. I remember we were watching it, and they got called up, and we were like, "Oh, that's unfortunate. They're gonna die." Anyway, let's move on to the. Yeah. Let's move on to the last story. We're not going to put a lot of time into this because there's not a lot of time to be put in it. It's all speculation. It's all theory.
I believed it needed to be put in because we talked about it together, and it was your concept. Again,
well,
I want to give you credit for that.
Here's the thing. I am not going to say I believe it. I'm going to simply say if it happened, I wouldn't be shocked. I can definitely see certain pieces on the chessboard moving to come to that conclusion.
So go to your theory here,
but
mindset of it all. Let's dive in.
Well, here's the thing. With the cuts WWE's been making, and when I'm talking cuts, we're talking massive slashes. They're cutting entire departments and merging them with others. That can be looked at as just like house cleaning, which needed to happen anyway. But then you look at it in the same context of all of these massive contracts being cut. This is the most people we've seen cut by WWE in 1 year in a long time. And I'm talking about talent. In a long time.
Because they were cutting more last year.
Well, here's the thing.
And the year prior to that.
No, we had 3 separate round of cuts this year. And so
they were small cuts each time.
They're like 7 people apiece. But again, neither here nor there. We're not going to get into the semantics of that. And just with certain power players like Nick Khan putting certain positions in place and certain ideas in place, I would not be shocked if we learned in a month or two that WWE was on the market and Vince was trying to sell. Do I think that's going to happen? No. He's a crazy old man. But he's literally going to die in his office chair, and people probably aren't going to find him for a few weeks. But again, there's also precedent for crazy old men who are obsessed with their own product selling their companies, all to be in a different context. With George Lucas and Star Wars, and LucasArts and Lucasfilms and all that good jazz. But again, like, you also see every year with WWE around this time, a lot of investors around the time of financial reports coming out quarterly, a lot of investors and a lot of board members selling off certain amount of stock when the price is high. And then they usually buy it low or whatever to get that extra quick buck. We actually haven't seen that much this year, which is also odd. Triple H and Stephanie sold off a good number of stock, but I think I read it was to buy a house. They needed that liquidation, which happens. So those little nuggets of information are odd. They're weird. And in normal businesses would lead to speculation and look as if the company is getting ready to sell. And I've also heard that Disney is actually interested. I did some more research into that the past 2 days. And apparently Disney is legitimately interested in buying WWE. Why not? They need the next Infinity Stone. So might as well get into a whole nother market. But if that were the case, like, I know you disagree with it. I know you don't believe it. I know you think it's all bullshit. And that's fine. I don't necessarily believe it. I believe the possibility exists. What's the word? Possible, but not probable.
Plausible would be your word.
What did I say?
You said possible or probable. I just went ahead and consolidated that to plausible. That's what that word means. There's a word for what you used.
Why not? I was still correct. You made me think that I used the wrong word.
No, I'm saying like plausible.
No. I know plausible, but I'm talking. I've heard the phrase several times of possible, not probable. That's I was referencing a phrase. But again, I think it's possible. I would much rather than discussing the semantics of it or if and or what, because there's really no way of us knowing. We can sit here and speculate all the live long day. I have no idea what's going on behind those doors.
Yeah, we can't really know. Well, I think we do.
Here's the thing. Businesses are businesses. They're going to do what they're going to do.
Yeah, I mean, businesses are going to do their own thing, but there's a few things I think we need to keep in mind before we decide to just believe a possible situation. And here's why I mention this. First thing is with Vince. As we've known for Vince probably since his whole thing we've known our entire lives. We've seen how this works. We know we might dislike him. We know we might not agree with his stories or his decisions.
Oh, I hate him.
But the one thing about Vince that we've always been able to trust is, from business side at least, from the business, not from creative business, Vince has been ahead of his time every time. When there were streaming services that were starting from the beginning, WWE was the first before any other sports company, any other major company. There before Disney, before even ESPN, all those things. Vince, in this era especially,
You're not wrong.
all that.
You're wrong.
He also was ahead of other things when it came to marketing. When it came to the website situation, in fact, for many years, wrestlers had websites with their name on them. They're all consolidated now. It's WWE.com, but they did so. TripleH.com, you go there right now. WWE.com is where it goes back to. He was the guy who got them majorly invested in social media. They even bought a social media company to try and build around that. Didn't work out, but at least it was understandable.
What? Vince trying to start another company off the back of WWE and flopping?
But
Never heard of something.
The idea behind that, though, was that, like, Tao, for example, was one they thought could work out and be the next Twitter, which, if you're WWE and you have a company doing that, it makes sense. They even bought Tap Out, the apparel company. And those things are good business moves up to a point. Tap Out probably a bigger deal now, especially.
Yeah.
Like, I think they've made a lot of money on that.
Here's the thing, I thought Tap Out was actually smart. So.
It was a great idea. They already partnered with them so many times, it just made no sense to just ignore that.
Might as well.
But moving on from that, though, many years WWE has had a problem of opening things and just putting their stuff everywhere. And there was no organization in that. It was absolute dog shit. Fans knew from the beginning all these things needed to be kind of cut down. Nick Khan was brought in to do exactly that. Come in, consolidate, make sure that things are put together, and they want to become a digital media and content creator. And that situation means that they're going to consolidate a lot. And especially Nick Khan, his job is to be exactly that. The guy that comes in and makes those decisions for them and lets them do that. Now, is he the one controlling the releases in the company? No. Unless they're corporate, he has no control of it. By the way, every time they release people from that role, he hires new people that he likes the most. So it's not like they're getting rid of somebody and just the jobs are gone. They're bringing other people in, so they're not losing and gaining money. It just makes no sense. Also,
right,
to point this out in a big way, back during the time when WCW and ECW were being on the market, the one thing about them beyond their tape library that everyone knew would be valuable was their talent. Their value was built on their talent. Without talent, there's no value. That being said, Braun Strowman and many others, even if you just like the fact that he has a higher contract, his value is still possible for them. By putting all that value together, controlled under one company, with the contracts being owned by those companies, there's no Turner Broadcasting here where the guys are trying to make deals with Turner instead of working with WCW. That's not happening in WWE because they all work with just the WWE. So if that sells off, everyone goes with that. Vince, however, is an old man knowing full well if he lets the company go, he has nothing better to do. Now, let's say, for example, Vince just wants to retire. Somehow, some way, we'll pretend that's the case. It's a lie. He never will retire. He'll die literally working at a desk. But let's pretend that today he decides to retire and wants to give the company. He's willing to sell it off to Disney instead of selling it off to his kids, which his dad offered him. And that will be something that Vince would never do in that way, because even though Vince may be a crazy old man, Vince's biggest thing is that he wants the company to remain part of the McMahon family. He would never just randomly in his old age just release it, and his kids never have a chance to get first.
Again, I think it's very dangerous to talk about this in absolutes, which you know me and I hate absolutes, period. So I'm not going to say that.
From that standpoint, though, we look at it from your standpoint, and I'm looking at it from mine. Just to be fair here.
I agree with you. Well, here's the thing. I'm not saying I disagree with you. I do. I just think your point of saying absolutely not going to happen is also irrelevant.
I didn't say absolutely not going to happen. I said it's unlikely to happen. And Vince is not unlikely to sell in that way.
So now, it's not going to.
When I say it's not going to or unlikely, whatever it might be, the reason I mention that, even if you want to look at it from an absolute statement, there's a lot of things that have to happen before that goes down. Number one, Vince answers to a board, doesn't answer to himself. He is CEO and chairman, but his role is one that can be overruled. Even though he holds two roles that are very much a power play situation, the board, which, by the way, Vince has to look at in a big way because Triple H and Stephanie both have board credentials, so they're on the board with it. So the goal at the end of the day was going to be eventually, if Vince passes or whatever it might be, Steph will get the chairwoman role, and Shane likely would be the CEO. That was going to be the plan. Now, let's pretend, though, that the McMahons are realizing, you know what, there's too much money being offered here that we can't just deny that. We have to give it away because we are going to make money off this, whether we stay or not. We can always stay on as helpers, but we're going to be billionaires maybe if this happens. So if WWE were to be offered massive money, let's say $100, $200 billion by Disney, hard to turn that money down.
To a degree, yes.
That
100%.
That situation, I think, will be so hard to turn down. They'd be want to sell then.
Also, let me just pose another idea to you that I know you're going to adamantly disagree with.
Okay.
But all this is also based on the idea that Stephanie and Triple H want it. And I'm not saying that they obviously wouldn't want the company.
You make a good point, though. You make a good point.
Maybe, like, the real possibility is that they look at this and they're like, this is $1 billion, and we can spend the rest of our time with our kids. Because they are very, and they're very family oriented, because you can see it from their social medias. They literally do everything with their kids. It's adorable if you haven't seen it.
I think you're right about that, but the one thing that kind of gets me, though, beyond all that is they've worked so hard to build what they've done in the company that letting that go, unless their payback is so huge they can just create their own company afterwards, unless it happens, I don't know.
Here's the thing. Let's put it from Triple H's perspective. Let's just say Triple H. Let's say he, sells and in 3 years he's like, man, I wish I could still do that. Are you telling me he could not call up Tony Khan or call up NWA or call up TNA Impact and just be like, hey, do y'all need somebody in creative or somebody on the board? Or shit, buy one of those companies that is an AEW.
I think if they do sell, they'd obviously make so much money because they have around 30% of stock. Suppose when they sell for $200 billion, they're going to make a couple billion off that sell.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Because the money be huge. So, yeah.
But here's the thing. It's like, Triple H could be like, man, I really want to do this again. And go buy NWA. Make them an offer they can't refuse. And he can just do that.
They sold so cheap NWA did to the guy from SmackDown. So you'd think that if that money was huge enough,
or go buy Impact from Anthem and make that into his NXT, his playground.
Or why not just start your own thing? Which
that's another.
He basically made that with his money.
Yeah, that's another option too. So what I'm saying is, I personally I think Stephanie and Triple H's connection to WWE is Vince. I think they worked so hard for that company to get it where it is for Vince. I think if
also they love the company, keep in mind, it wasn't just Vince. They love what they do. They're not doing it just for the love.
Well, no, I know what they're. I know, but what I'm saying is, I'm not talking about the wrestling business. I'm talking about the company itself. The WWE brand is, they're loyal to Vince, I think, more than the brand.
Maybe. Yeah.
So I think that given the opportunity to spend a lot of time with their kids, retire, and know for a fact if we want to do this again, we can do this again in a New York minute.
Ooh.
I think that's a possibility. I'm not saying it's it, but I think all of this hinges on the idea that they want it. And if they told Vince they don't want it, or if that idea has come around, or if this offer came up and they were like, do it, like, we don't need this, we can go, home and hang out with our kids, then I think that would probably push Vince to sell more. Because if their hearts aren't in it and he's looking down the barrel of $5 billion, you're gonna take it. So again, it's hard to,
but, you would take a lot of money.
You know what I mean?
That's why I say the offer has to be big enough to where if you see that money being, let's say, like $200 billion to $500 billion, you got to think about that.
To your argument, WCW's value is in their talent. Yes, that is not where WWE's value is anymore.
Their talent is in a lot of things, but the WCW thing was they also had a tape library issue.
But
library alone was billion.
WCW, when they sold, was an absolute trash fire. So
They sold because of so much debt they had that they had to get
Well,
the
that's
debt
what I'm
off.
saying.
They couldn't start event. They sold for $1 million, man, and then anyone could have ordered that.
That's what I'm saying. WCW's value was in their talent because WCW didn't have anything else to offer. WWE has Tap Out. They have their social networking division. They have the network itself. They have WWE has so much to offer. The most expansive wrestling library in existence. So the talent contracts are a drop in the bucket to what WWE's value is.
Yeah, that's why I think though the value is still important because you can't have a company without talent.
Well, that's
so
what I'm saying.
It's still important to that. But
that's
are
what
they
I'm arguing.
Everything? No, the business is the business, man. Obviously,
right.
you're right about that. There's so much there. Yeah,
well, that's what I'm arguing is that I don't think them letting Braun Strowman go is an indication that they're not. I don't think like, oh well, they're let Braun Strowman go. Therefore they're getting rid of an asset. Yeah, but I don't think that asset is worth as much as people want to give it credit for.
But it's also not something that, from my perspective, is a budget cut move. It's being done just because they have so many people on the roster. And
no, yeah.
Get rid of people.
Well, what I'm saying is, if they're wanting to trim the fat for a sale and make the profits look better, you're obviously going to go for the contracts.
That's not how you do it, though. Especially if it's $1 million and you made $500 million. Like you're not gonna.
I don't disagree, but what I'm saying is, with Braun Strowman's case especially, if they know they're not going to use him anymore, and he has such a high number contract, and it's like, well, if we're getting ready to sell, this is going to make us look $1 million better. Cut it, is my point. Like, I don't think it's going to change in the drastic. I'm just saying, like, if you are sitting there looking at the paper and be like, we're not going to use Braun, that's $1 million that can make us look $1 million better. Let it go because you're not going to use it, and it's more of an advantage to you in that point to let him go than it is to hold on to him. Even if it's a small advantage, it is an advantage.
This is true. That being said, though, Lee, we are past our time.
Well past our time.
And obviously, we went over our time, but we did cover everything we wanted to cover. Or is there anything else you wanted to kind of dive into before you go, or just want to go?
Yes and no.
Let's go with one of those.
I don't want to. Ultimately, yeah. I mean, everyone knows it's Pride Month this month, and that hits a little close to home for both of us. I have family members who are part of the LGBTQ community. You do as well. So we want to obviously extend our thoughts out to all those people and hope that they don't have to live through BS, because I've seen it a lot of times. And I absolutely hate it. It hits an emotional chord with me. And living in Alabama, we have to live with a bunch of hell yeah. I was, if I had time, I should have put up a banner, but I didn't think about it.
My lighting is really terrible, though.
Yeah, it's okay. But we live in Alabama, and we unfortunately deal with a lot of less than forward-thinking people. And I have a short temper when it comes to that, so I get in trouble a lot.
Yeah, I mean, you and I both do when it comes to things like this a little bit. I can say I'm a little calmer about it because I'm willing to talk to people about things like that. But there are things where if you start a conversation about something like that, I feel it's good because conversation is fine. Yeah. But the moment you decide to be hateful toward people, that's where I disagree.
Here's the thing.
You can't be cool with something.
Here's the nicest way I can put my stance, and I'm sure a lot of people who watch this show probably don't like or appreciate us bringing this up in a wrestling show, and I simply don't care.
I mean, my show's on this channel. Big deal.
Yeah, it's my show. My stance on it is, I don't care what you believe. I don't care what God you pray to. I don't care what book tells you what's right or wrong. Me personally, I am a Christian, but none of that matters. That is all 100% irrelevant. Every person, every human being deserves to be treated with respect and dignity, and not felt to be lesser than or belittled or bullied or hated based on who they choose to love. And a melody of other reasons. You shouldn't do that to anybody for any reason. But especially right now, I want to point out that specifically I will fight tooth and nail for someone's right to love someone else. I will not lift a finger for your right to hate someone. So
I believe Patrick Henry once said, "Give me liberty or give me death." But liberty,
Yeah,
oftentimes overlooked because people think liberty is like what he said, like, "Oh, I want no taxes," or "I want this." Liberty meant more than that. It meant the rights of all,
right.
not a few, but all. And because of that, we have a country literally designed and said to be freedom of religion, expression, everything. We have First Amendment rights to say what we want to say without being punished for that. We can't make people believe in something that we believe in,
No,
and I'm fine if you don't have the same beliefs, and that's cool. You believe what you want. We have no
yeah,
problem with that. Our biggest problem is never going to be that you cannot believe what you want to believe from whatever you want. The one problem we have will never be opinion of something. It's always going to be how you treat others, whether it's good or bad. The bad is important
yeah.
because people are out there. For many years, people were out there and being beaten just because of their race, just because they looked at someone cross. There's people dead that were hung by people in the 50s and 60s for just looking at someone wrong. That's bullshit that we can't stand. But more importantly, that bullshit has continued. People
Yeah.
have committed suicide because of the bullying from
Mhm.
either online or in person just for being gay or trans. That's to me something that kills me because
Same.
when you literally tell someone that they're lesser than because they just like the opposite sex or like the same sex or whatever it is, I find that stupid
Well, I find
because if we want to
it's
look at
stupid
if we want to
regardless.
look at a Christian Bible, by the way, just to point this out, the most repeated word in there is love, not, and the most unused is hate.
Well, that's my
If you
thing.
want, if you want to believe in a book that was written 2,000 years ago, put together by people who obviously politically organized a lot of things by changing it for the last 1,000 and plus years, if you want to believe that kind of stuff, that's fine. But by doing that,
Somebody's triggered
you
somewhere.
can't look at something and say to people that because this word says this or that says that, which by the way is mistranslated. So we'll go with that a long time later on.
Yeah,
But
that's no sense in getting into
long story
that.
short, long story short, if you want to believe all those things, that's fine. Just
Hmm?
don't say anything and deal
Mind your
with the world
business.
around you. Mind your
Yeah,
own business. Let
mind your
people
business.
do
Stay in
what
your
they
lane.
want to do. I don't
Like,
care
here's
what
the thing,
country you're in, what language you speak. That will always be true.
and we're seeing the whole race thing to play out currently in our country, and not just with the African American community who have been through some, we'll say, some shit. For lack of getting into that.
They probably say more than that, but yeah, I agree with you.
Oh yeah. Well, I could too, but we don't
There's
have
a
that
lot.
kind of time,
We don't have a chance to go over American history and other
man.
world
It's
history
not even
problems.
just that. It's just what I see. I work with a couple of African American guys who are two of my closest friends. They're the sweetest humans in the world, and the crap I see them have to deal with on a daily basis makes me want to choke somebody out. But that's neither here nor there. To get a little personal right now, what irritates me the most about the especially LGBTQ bullying stuff is that you see such a high number of these kids committing suicide because they're ashamed of who they are.
Under
And
18, you're looking at about 20% of people in those the last number of years who've done that in that
well,
community under 18 years old. That's insane.
and that bothers me because, albeit for different reasons, I've almost gone down that path. I've tried 3 separate times in my life, and luckily, I was too much of a coward to go through with it.
Or you just rethought your
Praise God.
decision. That's not cowardice. That's just being
Yes.
smart.
Well, no, I know. I put it that way though,
Well, you shouldn't
to
put it
make
that way, though.
myself feel better, huh?
You shouldn't put it that
Well,
way.
no. For
In fact, I
me,
think it's better to say
for
about it that you was
again,
better than
I say it that way for the simple fact of I was lucky. Um,
yeah,
I was
agreed.
lucky. I backed out. 3 separate times for not feeling accepted, and not because of my sexuality, but just for a melody of other things and feeling unwanted. And I understand that, albeit from a different point of view. So that breaks my heart, and I will never sit back and watch it happen. It shouldn't happen.
And this
It's despicable. It's disgusting. And if you contribute to that, if anybody who ever watches this video and you contribute to that kind of hate and bigotry, please never watch another one of our videos again.
we're cool with it. We'll deal
Please,
with the people watching the internet
please
without our mind at first.
unsubscribe to everything we do. I don't want you here. Because that's
if
just
you're
not,
like those people, I should say.
huh?
If you're like those people, the hating people
Yeah.
for who they are.
If you hate somebody for who they are, go away. You're not wanted. Because that's what you do to them. You tell them they're unwanted and they're wrong. You don't talk about paradoxes for a second, Joe. You know, we talk science all the time too.
We love paradoxes.
God is love, right?
I believe that is the case.
Okay. So therefore,
Or
God,
we could say, is love is love. If you want to go over that, like,
yeah, we can go over that a million times. But let's talk to our religious folk who like to beat people over the head with the Bible. And again, understand we're Christians. Don't think that we're just Christian bashing.
We also know history and science part too, which is kind of a problem at times.
I believe everything can work hand in hand. But let's just go over this for a second. If God is love, can love then be a sin?
Well, I guess that depends situationally on what you're talking about. But if you want to
I would argue, yeah, love alone.
If that's an emotional thing that you believe is connected to that,
right?
So and that emotion is somehow something that connects to everything. If you love someone, and God is supposed to be that, then you're literally hating your creator by not agreeing with it, right? Based on the way the scriptures are written.
If God is love, love cannot be a sin. Therefore, shut the hell up.
You used a theological argument that actually was sensible this time.
Thanks.
It was the first. Usually it's the science ones you get me with. This one was different. I agree. Good job.
Thank you. I'm smart sometimes.
The high five I gave you was kind of a bad one.
But anyway, I debated on bringing this up in the show, and we talked about it before the show because this is very personal to me.
I told you from the beginning, it's your thing, man.
I know.
Want to?
I know. I debated because I do get hot about this situation because again, I have friends who have gone through horrible things, and it breaks my heart every time.
And family at times for us both, not just me, not just you. It's for people we know that have family.
I have family. So
people it's one of those don't know.
It's one of those things that if you can't treat somebody with the basic human decency that everyone deserves, piss off. Is really the nicest way I can say it. I want to say more, but I can't.
And this is the greatest way to end the podcast having to be live, right? Piss off, everyone. Let's go on.
I mean, realistically, and if anybody ever watches this show, and you are a member of the LGBTQ community, and you deal with this kind of hate and bigotry, and you're still closeted, you're young, whatever, reach out, get help. Don't think you're alone. You're not.
There's a lot of good counseling for this, but also places like the Trevor Project works very great with people like that.
I donate to the Trevor Project regularly. Whenever I have a little extra cash that I'm not blowing on something stupid, I usually send it their way. Just remember, you're loved, you're accepted, you're acknowledged, and you're not wrong. So I think that's the best place to end this episode. We didn't get to comments because we didn't have time, and we didn't have that many, honestly.
But we'll try to get back to those comments next time, and we'll try to be on next week and next Thursday, the right time we normally are at. Right, Lee?
Yeah. Yes. I mean, there'll be some Thursdays where life gets in the way, and we'll do Fridays. But for the most part, Thursdays are almost always open. I work out on Thursdays, and sometimes I'm dead.
And he's going to choose Thursday, by the way, people. I didn't choose that.
Well, I chose Thursday.
First off,
I chose Thursday when I was off on Thursdays. And now I have to work and go work out. But realistically, I don't have
that long. You chose Thursday knowing you're going to be working and working out.
No. I started working 3 weeks ago. Like, I started working full-time on Thursdays again 3 weeks ago. We've been doing this for 6 weeks. Now, granted, I knew about this when I started working out.
Oh, wait a second. We've been doing it for 6 weeks. I've been asleep for the first 3 or 4.
That's true.
I wasn't
last week we had our first guest on with us who dipped out. God love her.
Nicole.
We're going to have her back on, and we're going to finish that conversation. She felt horrible. I've talked to her like 8 times.
I'm still pissed with the Ralph
Oh,
thing.
leave her alone.
I wanted to feel bad about it because I'm still feeling bad about it. I'm still hurting on the inside, somewhere deep in my stomach. So it could be indigestion though. I'm kind of hungry.
I talked to her like 8 times about it, and every time she's like, "I'm so sorry." I'm like, "Stop apologizing. It wasn't your fault. It's such a fault, Joe.
It was her fault.
It's not your fault.
The power went out. That's not my fault.
Anyway, again, I think that's where we're going to end the show because I'm tired. It's almost 10 o'clock. Again, be nice to each other. Spread love. Don't be a dick. Is the best way I can end this. So,
okay. I'm gonna let you in it. I'm not helping at all. Now I'm just letting it in.
I don't want you to help me. Hold on. First off, you're assuming I want help. I don't want help. You know me. I have no problem telling someone they're an asshole.
I'm not saying that. I'm just saying it's a terrible end of the show. But
I am for some.
Don't be a dick. Let's go home.
I'm in some situations my own worst enemy because sometimes I bite my tongue and sometimes I don't know when to shut up and I will just tell you exactly what I think and it gets me in trouble.
Like now?
Anyway, we love you guys. Have a wonderful day. We'll see you next week. Goodbye.
I can see people though. I'm still visible.
You're an idiot.